for your leadership and support throughout this year. I truly do believe, Mr. President, that this will be remembered as a pivotal moment in the life of our nation. A day when the Congress answered your call and made history. But honestly, I would say to the American people, President Trump has been making history since the first day of this administration. We've been rebuilding our military, standing with our veterans. And just last week, President Trump signed one of the largest investments in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan. We've been defending our borders, upholding the rule of law. Illegal crossings on our southern border are down by more than 50%. And President Trump has been restoring American credibility on the world stage, standing with our allies and standing up to our enemies. As the President reflected earlier today, our NATO allies are paying more toward their common defense. North Korea is more isolated than ever before. This President's put Iran on notice and put the war on Afghanistan on a path to victory. And thanks to the leadership of this Commander-in-Chief and the courage of our armed forces, ISIS is on the run, their capital has fallen, and their so-called caliphate has crumbled across Syria and Iraq. But what brings us here today is that President Trump also knows that American strength starts with a growing American economy. And from the first day of this administration, this president championed free and fair trade. He rolled back federal red tape at record levels. We've unleashed American energy. And today, Mr. President, you fulfilled the promise you made to millions of Americans struggling in this economy to cut taxes across the board for working families and businesses large and small. In August of this year, the President laid out his vision for a tax cut that would be a middle-class miracle. And that's exactly what the Congress passed today. This tax cut will put more money in the pockets of the American people. It'll make our tax code more simple, more fair, more easy to understand. It'll make businesses across America more competitive to create good-paying jobs and raise wages for working Americans. I can tell you I serve with him every day. President Donald Trump is a man of his word. He's a man of action. And with the strong support of these members of Congress, President Donald Trump delivered a great victory for the American people. We made history today. But as the President said when we gathered this morning, a few of us with a few less hours sleep than usual, we're just getting started. And I can assure you this President and this entire administration will not rest and relent until the forgotten men and women of America are forgotten no more. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your love for this country and the people of this country. And I know in my heart, with the strong continued support of the members of Congress who are gathered on these steps, and with God's help, you will make America great again.
Thank you, Mike, very much. A friend of mine, a very, very special man, Tim Scott. Tim, I'd like you to say a few words. He came in and he would solve some problems that we weren't looking too good a couple of times, and Tim was really, really a tremendous help. Thank you, Tim.
Well, Mr. President, during one of those conversations that we had, we talked about ways to improve distressed communities throughout this country. 52 million Americans living in distressed communities, and we talked about legislation that could move those communities forward. And you said yes. And as a part of this tax reform package, the Investing in Opportunity Act has been included, which will bring trillions of dollars into poor communities because of your willingness to listen.
Thank you. Thank
you. The President said I only have about 45 more minutes, so I'm going to get to my... Oh. He didn't say that. Okay, got it. Let me just say to those Americans who are watching this process, this is not about Washington. It's not about the left. It's not about the right. It's about single-parent moms who are looking for a reason to be hopeful in 2018. This tax reform plan delivers for the average single mother a 70% tax cut. For the average family who's working paycheck to paycheck, looking for ways to be hopeful about their future, to have an extra night for dinner out at a restaurant. This tax reform package cuts their taxes by nearly 60%. And because of folks like Marco Rubio and Ivanka, when you think about the folks with kids in the household, this plan doubles the child tax credit and makes about 70% of it refundable. This is a plan that we can be proud of because it speaks to the hearts of everyday Americans.
Diane, come on up. Diane Black. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank all of the folks that are standing behind me because it has been a team effort. When we talk about doing tax reform and the Tax Reform and Jobs Cuts Act, that is what the American people are going to benefit by. And as Tim has just said, it is the average American. That's the reason why we did this tax reform. We looked at those right in the middle, those families that need the assistance and the help and the relief to be able to live their lives the way we have promised with the American dream. It is such an honor to stand here with the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, who have been an integral part in making sure that this happened. I want to thank Kevin Brady, who I know hours and hours and hours worked hard to make this happen in what was really a short period of time. And some of the folks that are being left out right now, and I know we've thanked them before, but I want to thank them publicly, and that is all of the staff that has worked so hard in both the House and the Senate to make this happen. Now, we can say Merry Christmas to the American people because we are giving them a huge gift for Christmas, a break in these taxes and an opportunity for our jobs to grow and to give them a bigger paycheck. And so I want to say thank you to Mr. President. Thank you, President Trump, for allowing us to have you as our president and to make America great again.
Thank you, Diane, very much. And we can say Merry Christmas again. People are saying Merry Christmas again, and we like the sound. I want to ask Lisa Murkowski and Dan Sullivan to come up from Alaska. They've been really working. And if Don Young is here, and I think he's around here, the three of them, come here.
Dan and Don straight now.
Come here. Dan, get over here, Dan.
Yes, sir.
Lisa?
You get right here.
Thank you.
You'll get my name right.
Oh, I did, actually. I called him.
Mr. President, I don't know if you've recognized this is a very historic day, of course, but it's also the beginning of winter solstice. Now, it doesn't feel like it right now, but the winter solstice is the shortest day, the darkest day. And for us in Alaska, we've had some pretty dark days recently. But with passage of this tax bill, with passage finally, almost 40 years later, to allow us to open up the 1002 area, this is a bright day for Alaska. This is a bright day for America.
All right.
So we thank you for that. We thank you for that. Think about it. 31 years we've been working on tax reform. 38 years now to open up ANWR. This has been a multi-generational fight. And I looked at some of our friends from Alaska who have come 5,000 miles to be here for the vote last night and today.
Yeah.
To those who live there, to those who raise their families there, and to those who are looking to live for generations, know that our promise to you today is a bright future, one where we care for our environment, where we care for our people. And we also care for our country in providing a resource that is needed not only by the United States, by Alaskans, but by our friends and allies. This, Mr. President, is what energy dominance is all about. So let's go.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, I want to thank you and your administration. I want to thank Secretary Zinke, who's doing a great job. But Senator Murkowski said it very well. This administration has come in and recognized this incredible, incredible resource that we have in our nation. Developing our energy is good for jobs. It's good for energy security. It's good for manufacturing. It's good for the environment because we have the highest standards in the world. And it's very, very good for our foreign policy and national security. Mr. President, sir, you released your national security strategy just a couple days ago. And in there, you talk about the economy, which is what this tax bill is all about, but you also talk about energy dominance. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you on behalf of all Alaskans and the American people because it's the right policy, and we're finally doing it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank all these guys standing behind me, these ladies, the people that helped me do this. This is 37 years I try to get this passed. It proves one thing: perseverance overcomes intelligence any day of the year. But I want to thank the President. I want to thank you, Mr. President, and my two senators. This is a team that can't be beat. We'll do what's right for Alaska. This bill does what's right for this nation, and the great land will be great again. Thank you, Mr. President.
He's a pretty popular guy, huh? It's pretty good. I want to ask Orrin Hatch, a special friend of mine, I can tell you that, somebody that spoke really well of me when it wasn't exactly the easiest thing to do. He was just always in there, always fighting for all of us, and did a fantastic job as chairman. Orrin, say a few words, please.
Well, Mr. President, I have to say that you're living up to everything I thought you would. You're one heck of a leader, and we're all benefiting from it. This bill could not have passed without you, couldn't have passed without the Alaskan delegation, couldn't have passed without the leadership in the House and the Senate, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, and the other leaders as well. All I can say is that we're making headway. This is just the beginning. You stop and think about it. This president hasn't even been in office for a year. And look at all the things that he's been able to get done by sheer will in many ways. And I just hope that we all get behind him every way we can, and we'll get this country turned around in ways that will benefit the whole world, but above all, benefit our people and bring us all to a realization of how really great America really is and how the rest of the world depends on us. I love this country. I came from very humble roots, and I have to say that this is one of the great privileges of my life to stand here on the White House lawn with the President of the United States, who I love and appreciate so much, and with these wonderful colleagues and cabinet members who stand behind us. And to see all of you and realize that you care too. All I can say is that God loves this country. We all know it. We wouldn't be where we are without him. And we love all of you. And we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to make this the greatest presidency that we've seen, not only in generations, but maybe ever. God bless all of you.
Thank you. Paul Ryan just said, how good was that? Another very special man, works so hard, knows it inside out and backwards, Kevin Brady.
Thank you. Okay, guys. We're getting a little Thank you, Mr. President. This is a historic day. It's an exciting day. And I knew I was going to be here with you to mark this momentous occasion. So I wore my Houston Astros tie because they're still the champion of the World Series. I figured today you would give me some slack on that. Look, this is a historic day in so many ways, and it didn't happen just by itself. People often ask, when did you know? When did you know tax reform could be achieved in America for the first time in 31 years? And my answer is always the same. November 8th, when President Trump, you were elected President of the United States. That's when I knew it was real. And when you put together the great ideas on tax reform from inside and outside Congress, and I see many of you here today with us, remarkable leadership and courage from the men and women behind me in the Senate, and especially my colleagues in the House. When you put together remarkable leadership in the House and the Senate, the work that was done in the White House, Gary and Steve, Vice President Pence, and Mr. President, your willingness to make this your commitment, to go across the country to sell the need for tax reform, and then stay at the table with us and on the phone with us to get this done. But for your leadership, we would not be here today. So thank you so much. And let me finish by speaking directly to the American people. There are 3 dates you need to put on your calendar. The first is New Year's Day, because on New Year's, our country will have a new tax code for a new era of American prosperity. New Year's Day. In February, look to your paychecks. Hardworking Americans will see the result of the hard work of this president and this Congress to make this tax reform possible. It will show in your paychecks. And then April 15th, that hated day. This April 15th will be the last time you ever file your taxes under this horrible, broken tax code, because you'll have a new one for the future of your family and your small business. So this is a great day for our country, a great day for our economy, and a great day for America. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Did a fantastic job. And another man who was with us all the way, no matter when I called, he was there or he'd get back within minutes, Kevin McCarthy.
To the President and Vice President, during that campaign, you listened to voices no one else was listening to. You listened to those that were trying to get a pay raise, or that parent that was fighting for their children, or to that person who always dreamed of being an entrepreneur or creating a small business like you did, Mr. President. And you know what? For all those people, you heard them. We would not be standing here today if it wasn't for you. It doesn't matter if you were overseas fighting for America. So many people back here got your phone call fighting for tax reform. This is a big day for America. This is America's comeback. Come February, check your check, because that will be the pay raise of the vote for Donald Trump. That will be the beginning of the next century, America's century. Thank you, and God bless.
So I just want to conclude by saying this will indeed be a very big day when people look back at our country. It's a whole different attitude, a whole different way. And I really want to end by looking back and thanking all of those people standing behind me that worked for years. This was the culmination of a few months' work, but they've been working on getting this done, whether it's Mitch or Paul or Kevin or Orrin. They have been working on this for years, years and years. And I just want to turn around and I want to thank them all. They are very, very special people. Thank you very much, everybody.
The president and his team celebrating the tax win for Republicans, absolutely the biggest legislative win of his tenure. And today, Republicans are living in the moment. Analysis begins now on Fox News Channel on satellite and cable. For those of you watching on your local Fox station, we return you to regular programming. I'm Shepard Smith, Fox News, New York. And continuing now on Fox News Channel, our chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, was at the ceremony this afternoon and is live out in the yard for us now. Hello, John.
Hey, good afternoon to you, Shep. We're just ducking down here so we don't get in the way of the still cameras as they're taking some shots of the president leaving here. You know, I got to say that this was originally billed as a news conference, but if this was a news conference, I'll eat my hat because the president would have needed a pair of binoculars to see where I was, and I would have needed a megaphone for him to hear me. This was all about the celebration of the president's biggest legislative achievement so far of his administration. This was the central promise of his campaign. Obamacare went first. It was a little bit of a technicality because they wanted some more money for tax cuts, but this was what the president wanted to get done. And he got most of what he wanted. He got the corporate taxes down from 35 to 21%. Got a doubling of the child tax credit. He got a doubling of the standard deduction. He wanted more movement on the corporate tax cuts, but just couldn't get that through. Also, we should point out, because this is significant, the president had promised many times during the campaign and as president to go after those hedge fund managers who were pocketing tens upon tens of millions of dollars and paying 24% because of a provision called carried interest that the president wanted to get rid of. That would have bumped up their tax rate to somewhere just south of 41%. But because of resistance on Capitol Hill, we're told by White House sources, that wasn't even considered, wasn't even brought to the table. So the president had to concede on that. But certainly he got what he wanted in terms of some relief to the middle class and then the corporate tax cut. Because as he said in the cabinet room earlier today, Shep, this is all about jobs, jobs, and jobs. Another interesting provision here that the president really highlighted this morning in the cabinet room was this idea that they got rid of the tax penalties in the individual mandate in Obamacare, which the president says effectively repeals Obamacare. Now, the Congressional Budget Office projected, and this is something that the critics of the president have jumped onto, that by repealing the tax penalties in that individual mandate, some 13 million people would choose not to take health insurance. So some 13 million people will effectively lose health insurance. And then because those people are out of the revenue pool, there will be an increase on average in insurance policies in the exchange of some 10%. So that's something that critics will continue to hammer the president on throughout the election year, which is next year. Now, in terms of signing of this, the bill has to now be enrolled by Congress. It'll get to the White House maybe by Friday, maybe not until the weekend. Then the White House staff has to review it. That's a process that'll take a couple of days. And with Christmas in the middle of that, that will delay it a little bit. So likely that the president won't get this bill to his desk to sign until sometime probably mid to late next week. Now, he really wants to sign this bill before the beginning of the year, so it's quite likely that he could either sign it at Mar-a-Lago or have a signing ceremony somewhere else. And then when he returns to Washington, D.C., and the Congress comes back in early January, have another big event like this as a post-signing ceremony. The one possible hitch in all of this has to do with a bill to continue funding the government. I'm told the White House is confident they're going to get a continuing resolution. It will continue to fund the government through January the 19th. And they are also confident they'll get what are called pay-go waivers, which means that entitlements would not be cut to pay for the tax cuts. But if they don't get that, that would likely then delay the signing of this tax reform bill until the new year, because there's a complicated provision that if the president signs it this year and don't get a waiver, those cuts to entitlements take place next year. But if he waits until 2018 to sign it, they wouldn't kick in until 2019. But again, Chip, the White House confident they're going to get those waivers. But I mean, you got to say the president had a big win. This is his biggest win so far of his presidency. And what Orrin Hatch said about him just a short time ago, I've not heard any member of Congress ever say that about this president. Shep?
John Roberts, live at the ceremony at the White House. John, thanks so much. Let's turn to Peter Doocy, our man on Capitol Hill. Peter?
And, Shep, we're now starting to hear some warnings from the handful of Republicans who decided that they could not support this tax bill in the House. Like Peter King, his big problem is that the tax bill limits state and local tax deductions, and he is saying that he thinks his own party went too fast.
My concern with this is we don't know what all the consequences are because it was rushed through so quickly. The 1986 tax reform, that took 2 years and hundreds of witnesses and countless hearings.
There was also a lot of talk today about the fact that the House had to vote for a second day in a row because Senate Democrats complained that certain education provisions, among others, violated Senate rules. But now Republicans are defending those provisions, and they're saying that the fact Democrats wanted them out reflects poorly on them.
What happened in the Senate is Democrats attacked some small colleges that have a trust fund that give Appalachia kids who've never gone to school, college, and their families, they gave them free tuition, and that's what Democrats attacked to make us now come back to the House. So this isn't moving too fast.
So even though the House had to vote a second day in a row because of a technicality, every Republican that I spoke to while they were getting on the bus to go on down to the White House was in very high spirits, Shep.
Hey, Democrats criticizing this bill, though it's already passed.
Right, they still are, and they continue to make the argument to constituents that they think this tax bill only really benefits rich people.
We know they're popping champagne down Pennsylvania Avenue. There are only two places where America's popping champagne: the White House and the corporate boardrooms, including Trump Tower.
And another member of Congress from the Democratic side, Jackie Speer, compared the tax reform plan to a lump of coal in the stockings of people in the middle class.
Peter Doocy on Capitol Hill. Peter, thank you. Ahead, I'll speak with the Wall Street Journal's John Bussey. We'll talk about the positives and negatives in this bill and why he says the tax plan could face some political headwinds. That's just ahead.
Your modern software factory runs millions of lines of code through trillions of connections. You think I'm dramatizing? Think again. Application security, each line a potential breach. That's why checking code before you deploy isn't enough. You have to check it continuously.
I do?
Yep, you do. When your app's in here, and when it's out here. I know, you can't be in a trillion places at once, but we can.
Touch is how we communicate with those we love. But when your psoriasis is bad, does it ever get in the way? Embrace the chance of 100% clear skin with Taltz. Taltz is proven to help people with moderate to severe psoriasis achieve completely clear skin. With Taltz, up to 90% of patients had a significant improvement of their psoriasis plaques. In fact, 4 out of 10 even achieved completely clear skin. Don't use if you're allergic to Taltz. Before starting, you should be checked for tuberculosis. Taltz may increase risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or have symptoms, or if you've received a vaccine or plan to. Inflammatory bowel disease can happen with Taltz, including worsening of symptoms. Serious allergic reactions can occur. Ready for a chance at 100% clear skin? Ask your doctor about Taltz today and go to Taltz.com to learn how to pay as little as $5 a month.
New Year's Day is college football playoff day with back-to-back semifinals. So cancel everything and watch some football.
You gotta watch the football!
Because the playoff is on, and it's gonna be epic.
The College Football Playoff Semifinals, New Year's Day on ESPN.
Just in, Fox News has now confirmed Senator Al Franken says he will resign on January the 2nd, effective January the 2nd. Earlier this month, the Minnesota Democrat announced he will leave the Senate after accusations of sexual misconduct. He denied some claims, said he remembered others differently than his accusers, but he didn't say when he was leaving. We know along the way there have been new calls, Joe Manchin and others, for him not to resign, but now it is a done deal. January 2nd is his last day. The Minnesota Lieutenant Governor, the Democrat Tina Smith, will take Franken's place in the Senate. Now back to the Republican tax plan. Let's bring in John Bussey, associate editor at the Wall Street Journal, with which this network shares common ownership. He's also a Fox News contributor. A couple of things. The CHIP, the Child Insurance Program, serves about 9 million kids. Senators Collins and Alexander have apparently just confirmed that CHIP will not be renewed this year.
One of the big political concerns that the Republicans are going to face over the next 12 months. Look, this was a victory lap, well deserved by this administration and by this Congress. That was a big undertaking. They got a tax reform bill through, first one in a generation. And Paul Ryan and Kevin Brady are sharp on these issues. Their argument has been, look, this is going to boost the economy. It's going to create more jobs in the United States because companies are going to invest with all those tax savings. That means there's going to be more jobs. It means there's going to be wage pressure up and better types of jobs available for people. That's the positive side of this, and that may well happen. But the headwinds are substantial for this as well, the political headwinds. Economists are split on whether or not you're going to see that growth. It's been a mixed bag in the past. Yeah, it happened in the 80s, but the 80s also benefited from the baby boomers hitting their primary spending years. Now the baby boomers are retiring. They're getting older. Entitlement costs are going up. That's going to add to the deficit. This bill is expected by a congressional committee to add $1 trillion in debt over the next 10 years. And you've got a Democratic Party that feels stiff-armed. So when the Republicans go back to Congress to try to, tweak the bill if necessary, because of maybe a little bit more debt than they were expected, they're going to find an intransigent group of Democrats not willing to compromise.
And they won't be working under continuing resolution rules where they only need 50 plus 1. They'll need 60.
There'll be that. And also, people have got to remember that this is going to be highly beneficial to companies. And it is going to make them more competitive. They pay higher taxes than a lot of other industrialized countries demand. That's going to benefit companies here and make them more competitive globally. But those tax cuts are permanent for companies. They are not permanent for individuals. And so politically, you're going to see people begin to wonder, what's going to change? Do I invest, as an individual? Do I invest as a company? Am I going to see this tax bill once again change if Democrats get control of Congress in the next Congress?
One other thing on which the president likes to talk about keeping promises. One of the things he promised was that the hedge fund loophole would go away, that managers of hedge funds and private equity firms, he said during the campaign, he goes, they're getting away with murder. And it's going to stop. Well, if they were getting away with murder, they're still getting away with murder because that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's not going to go anywhere, and you can't win them all.
No.
But at the same time, the optics of that will be difficult for the Republicans in this next campaign season. Along with the cheers, there's the sound of a dice roll because it's a gamble on whether or not this is going to improve the economy well enough, largely enough, to offset the likelihood of increased deficits.
You're a big real estate investor, though. Times are good.
Certain types of real estate investors, but individuals will have less that they're allowed to deduct if they are to buy a home. And that's a consideration also for our home prices.
You're talking about for the little guy who wants it. Well, that wasn't what I was talking about.
Didn't sound that way.
It's great to see you, John.
Pleasure.
Thank you. If you don't like the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, the Republican tax bill should make you happy because it gets rid of the penalty for not buying insurance. But of course, what that means is that for those who do have insurance, in some cases the sick and the elderly, their rates are going up. There's no doubting it. The winners and the losers from the plan coming up.
Get up to $400 toward a Galaxy Note 8 or S8 with qualifying trade-in. Only on Samsung.com.
Why do you need a modern software factory? Hey, do you like that app?
Not really.
That's why. And that's a big deal, because a bad experience is bad for business. So you need to continuously build, test, and deliver amazing apps, predicting problems before they ever become problems. Impossible, you say? Well, actually...
Oh, hey, I like this one.
Get up to $400 toward a Galaxy Note 8 or S8 with qualifying trade-in. Only on Samsung.com.
Let's take a look at some of the winners and losers in the new tax plan. Nancy Cook is a White House reporter for Politico and joins us live now from their headquarters. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
We've got a TikTok of some of these that I'd like to try to get through here. If we could put them up on the screen, because the notes on this I don't actually have. The GOP tax plan winners, corporations. I guess there's no way to overstate the biggest winner of them all are the corporations.
Absolutely. I mean, the corporations saw a huge tax cut from 35% to 21%. Their tax cut is permanent, whereas the individual side is temporary, expiring after 2025. And really, the corporate rate was one of the signature things that the president wanted. And I would say the corporations are the biggest winners from this.
Oil drillers, this says. How do oil drillers benefit?
Well, you know, as we saw in Trump's speech and a number of the members of the Alaska delegation who got up to thank the president, this tax bill includes a provision that opens up oil drilling in Alaska, which is a provision that a lot of conservatives have wanted for a long time. It may seem unusual in a tax bill, but this is the vehicle that they used for it, and that's a really key ask for a lot of Republicans.
And another of the winners, tax lawyers and accountants. I thought this was supposed to be simpler.
It was supposed to make it simpler, but in reality, it didn't really. I mean, it just moved the puzzle pieces around a little bit. You have extremely complicated new international tax laws for companies that companies need to figure out, a move to a territorial tax system. You have a new way to try to game the pass-through rate. And so really, this is a huge boon to tax experts, accountants, lawyers, people who advise corporations and wealthy people, because there's a whole new thicket of rules to work through.
Yep. Losers now, homeowners in high-tax states like New Jersey, New York City, California, Massachusetts, they're going to pay a lot more.
Yeah, they'll pay a lot more because you can't necessarily deduct the full state and local taxes anymore. You know, you sort of have to pick between that and the property taxes. The mortgage interest deduction has gone down. And so that will really hurt people in primarily these blue states.
Yeah. And look at that at the bottom there, commuters. Who doesn't commute? I guess some people don't, but...
Right, it just takes away a deduction that commuters have. But I think like one of the real, the real keys to the losers are people who liked Obamacare because it repeals the individual mandate. That's a real potential threat to the Affordable Care Act. And then secondly, individuals, while they definitely gain in the short run, in the long term, all of those provisions that help individuals will expire after 2025. Yeah. Republicans are banking on the idea that the next Congress or next administration will extend those, but we don't know.
We're done. 3 minutes to Cavuto. I'm Shepard Smith in New York. Have a great holiday.
Your modern software factory runs millions of lines of code through trillions of connections. You think I'm dramatizing? Think again. Application security, each line a potential breach. That's why checking code before you deploy isn't enough. You have to check it continuously.
I do?
Yep. You do. When your app's in here, and when it's out here. I know, you can't be in a trillion places at once, but we can.
I can do more to lower my A1C.
And I can do it with what's already within me.
Because my body can still make its own insulin. And once weekly Trulicity activates my body to release it. Trulicity is not insulin. It comes in a once-weekly, truly easy-to-use pen. It works 24/7, and you don't have to see or handle a needle.
Trulicity is a once-weekly injectable medicine to improve blood sugar in adults with type 2 diabetes when used with diet and exercise. It should not be the first medicine to treat diabetes or for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Do not take Trulicity if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer, if you have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if you're allergic to Trulicity. Stop Trulicity and call your doctor right away if you have a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, or symptoms like itching, rash, or trouble breathing. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Taking Trulicity with a sulfonylurea or insulin increases your risk for low blood sugar. Common side effects include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, decreased appetite, and indigestion. Some side effects can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
I choose once-weekly Trulicity to activate my within.
If you need help lowering your A1C and blood sugar, activate your within. Ask your doctor about once-weekly Trulicity.
Here's to raising a glass and toasting the health of those we hold dear. Here's to absent friends and buried hatchets. Here's to the groom and the other groom. To a gesture recognized by all. Here's to our favorite Italian wine, shared with the best of friends. Cavit. Love it, share it.
Now, catch a brand new Watters World every weekend. The hot button issues, the outrage, opinion, and insight. No one covers America like Jesse. Watters World every weekend, Saturdays on Fox News Channel. America knows who tells it straight.
I got news for you.
America knows who gets it right.
You tell me.
That's why more Americans turn to Judge Jeanine every weekend.
We've got a lot on tap for you tonight.
Every Saturday on the Fox News Channel.
Great. Again, you haven't heard that, have you?
That had a hint of Captain Kirk there. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and this is Your World. And the president in a world of joy today, as are Republicans in general, on a big win on the floor of the House of Representatives. Of course, that was expected, a perfunctory vote. And then everybody to the south lawn of the White House, a who's who, the Republican Party, say, we have just done it. We have just passed a generational tax cut, the likes of which we haven't seen since Ronald Reagan was President of the United States, and now confident that in short order this will be signed by this President of the United States. Here's the thing, though. With all the hoopla and pageantry and remarks one after another today, it has not yet been signed by the President of the United States, so it's not quite a done deal. Kevin Corke at the White House, when will it be?
Not quite. You're right. Probably sometime next week, my friend, but either way, whether it happens next week, maybe here or down in Florida,
maybe the president tries to wrap this thing up, obviously, this year, because if you don't, there are a number of other things that cascade and it pushes back some other parts of entitlements. But the fact is, probably mid-next week, after this thing is enrolled on the Hill and reviewed by the White House, he's going to sign this thing. And ultimately, we can all say, yes, indeed, Neil, this was an historic day here at the White House, not just for congressional lawmakers, but obviously for the president himself, making good on a promise to overhaul the nation's tax code. But today's ceremony was also heavy, frankly, on a simple theme, one you and I have talked about on several occasions. Promises made, promises kept.
We did the largest tax cut in our history. I hate to say this, but we essentially repealed Obamacare because we got rid of the individual mandate, which was terrible. The whole country, the world, they tried in Ronald Reagan. They tried with the Bushes. They tried with everybody. They never got Anwar, but we got Anwar in this bill.
Now, for those, Neil, who were busy, tied up with other things today, you may have missed the event, or maybe you saw it, but you weren't really listening. There were a couple of moments that I thought were pretty poignant that people will certainly be talking about. The president's shout out to Steve Scalise, and also the incredibly powerful words of Utah Senator Orrin Hatch.
We're going to make this the greatest presidency that we've seen, not only in generations, but maybe ever.
Boy, that was really something to listen to. You could sense in his remarks, Neil, how much this meant to him. Keep in mind, a number of guys on the Hill, men and women, have been working on this for years, and in some cases even decades. Now, I know that you'll get into the weeds on the particulars, but for the folks that don't know money as well as you do, let me just share a little bit of the details about the tax bill while we have a moment. It reduces the corporate rate to 21%, down from 35%. If you're earning between 49 and 86 grand, you're going to get an average tax cut of about $930. Families making 86 to 149, even bigger, just over 1,800. It should be larger, we are told, by congressional lawmakers. But I should also point this out, Neil. Many of these tax cuts could sunset by 2026 unless congressional lawmakers do something. And the state and local tax write-offs are certain to decrease. And one more nugget, I think the folks at home might find this interesting, especially if you are trying to buy a house or if you own a house. Mortgage deduction capped at $750K. Now, that's actually a bit of a compromise. I know some lawmakers were telling me they wanted it right around $500. But if you're on the coast, east and west, where property is super expensive, $750 is actually a better